In the heart of a jungle that's known to swallow entire armies, the U.S. military launched a strike like never before. Deep within the Darién Gap, a treacherous stretch of jungle where law and order were nothing more than myths, an empire of terror was about to meet its end. For years, the Stone brothers, Lucas and Jared, ex-Special Forces operatives turned ruthless warlords, ran the deadliest cartel on the planet, trafficking drugs, weapons, and human lives across continents. Their stronghold, Elsencio, was a fortress of death. 40-foot walls, underground bunkers, and heavily armed militias that made any attempt to stop them seem impossible. But then, on July 10, 2025, something changed. 2,000 U.S. troops, armed with the world's most advanced weapons, backed by stealth drones and precision missiles that could erase entire strongholds, were sent in with one mission: to destroy Elsencio. It wasn't just a raid. It wasn't just another operation. This was war. In just 3 hours, the Stone brothers' empire, one that had terrorized thousands of civilians, trafficked innocent people to the darkest corners of the world, and evaded justice for years, would fall. But how? How did 2,000 soldiers manage to wipe out 3,000 cartel fighters, rescue over 2,000 civilians, and leave the world's deadliest cartel in ruins with no casualties on the American side? This is a story of how modern warfare, armed with the best technology and absolute precision, brought an end to an empire built on terror. The U.S. military didn't just fight a cartel. They rewrote the rules of war in ways no one saw coming. The Darién Gap, a 106-mile stretch of impassable jungle, was known as a region where time stood still, untouched by civilization. But in the heart of this untamed wilderness stood a dark empire hidden away from the world's eyes. It was here that Lucas and Jared Stone, two American-born brothers, both former Special Forces operatives turned ruthless warlords, had built a criminal empire like no other. What started as small-time trafficking operations evolved into something much more deadly: Elsencio. A fortress that spanned 37 square miles of dense jungle, was the epicenter of their illicit trade. Their private army, modeled on U.S. military tactics, was equipped with shoulder-fired missiles, anti-aircraft systems, machine guns, and armored transport vehicles. 3,000 cartel soldiers were scattered across this jungle base, living under a code of absolute loyalty to the Stone brothers. The cartel didn't just traffic drugs, they trafficked human beings, captives from across Central and South America, and at least 126 confirmed U.S. citizens destined for organ harvesting or sexual slavery in the infamous Golden Triangle. Elsencio had been built to withstand any force. It was a fortress of both military might and human shields, with schools, hospitals, and mock villages that disguised their military bunkers, designed to deter a direct assault from forces that might hesitate to strike. But there was no more hesitation. For years, the Stone brothers' empire had remained untouched, their fortress impenetrable. The U.S. military had launched at least 6 covert operations between 2021 and 2024, but all had ended in failure. The Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, and CIA SAD operatives, some of the world's most elite military units, had tried and failed at every turn. Their attempts were thwarted by the dense jungle, extreme terrain, and the Stone brothers' strategic defenses.
The jungle was more than just a physical barrier. It was a weapon itself. Sinkholes, dense canopy cover that blocked satellite signals, and humidity that jammed drone optics made every operation a gamble. The Stone brothers knew this terrain well. Their men were jungle trained, and the U.S. military's technological advantage seemed useless in this natural labyrinth. In Operation Black Torch of 2022, the U.S. lost 19 Special Forces soldiers when their Black Hawk helicopters were shot down by SAMs, likely smuggled in from Eastern Europe. Another operation in 2023 led to the disappearance of a 12-man recon team whose bodies were never recovered. This was no longer just about capturing criminals. The US was dealing with a military force that understood how to survive in the unforgiving environment of the Darién Gap. Despite these crushing setbacks, something in Washington had changed. The US would no longer treat Elsencio as a criminal outpost. Elsencio had crossed a line, and now the US would bring the full weight of military force against it. The discovery of the 2 American children was a breaking point, and the US government was no longer willing to tolerate the Stone brothers' reign of terror. The children, ages 9 and 13, had been found in Elsencio's underground prison, locked away in a tiny damp cell, awaiting a grim fate. Bound for organ harvesting, they were victims of the cartel's most grotesque trade, human lives. The news spread like wildfire, and the Pentagon reacted immediately. President Trump authorized an all-out assault on the cartel, with no regard for the cost. The decision was clear. The Stone brothers had committed atrocities too vile to ignore. The United States would use its full military might to end this operation once and for all. What made this situation even chilling was the realization that these 2 children weren't the only ones. Thousands of victims, many from South and Central America, some even American citizens, had been systematically exploited, their organs harvested, their bodies sold. Elsencio's heavily fortified gates, hidden amidst dense jungle, could no longer hide the truth. The United States was ready to make a statement. The war on terror had officially extended to the dark corners of the world's criminal networks. The stage was set for Operation Iron Justice to roll in and deliver a powerful message. The time for diplomacy and negotiation was over. The question now wasn't if the US could win the battle, it was how the Stone brothers would fight back with everything they had left. In the early hours of July 10, 2025, the full weight of US military power descended upon the Darién Gap. A mission of unprecedented scale, Operation Iron Justice began with the deployment of over 2,000 elite US soldiers drawn from the best of the US Army Rangers, Marine Corps Rangers, and Delta Force. This was no typical military raid. This was an assault where precision and technology were just as important as the men and women in uniform. The MQ-20 Avenger drones became the heart of the operation. These cutting-edge unmanned aircraft were more than just eyes in the sky. Equipped with facial recognition technology, infrared imaging, and multispectral thermal cameras, the drones were capable of identifying targets in real time, even under the dense canopy of the jungle. The AI algorithms integrated with the Sentinel satellite network enabled the military to track movement across 30 square miles, mapping the terrain and building a real-time 3D model of the entire compound. Every single building, tunnel, and bunker was cataloged and analyzed.
What made this assault truly game-changing was the real-time precision. Every shot, every strike, every movement was calculated to minimize collateral damage. Unlike previous operations, where the terrain and civilian presence made it impossible to operate without risking unnecessary casualties, this mission would be guided by surgical precision. The Tomahawk missiles, launched from U.S. Navy destroyers, were designed to hit critical communication hubs and weapon depots while avoiding civilian casualties entirely. In 30 seconds, the skies would begin to burn. This wasn't just a military strike, it was a message. The Stone brothers cartel was about to face the full fury of American military power. But the question remained, would the cartel be ready for the advanced AI technology, or would their fortress stand strong against this unrelenting assault? As 0300 hours struck, the silence of the jungle was shattered by the roar of 12 MQ-20 Avenger drones. Stealthy and silent, they moved across the jungle canopy like ghosts, dropping precision-guided payloads on key command nodes. The explosions rocked the jungle, sending shockwaves through Elsencio. Within 20 seconds, communications were severed, and the cartel forces were thrown into a state of chaos. The advanced drones could distinguish between militant forces and civilians with almost perfect accuracy, and every strike was calibrated to minimize harm to innocent lives. But that was only the beginning. As the drones did their job, 6 Tomahawk Block 5 missiles were fired from the U.S. Navy destroyers in the Caribbean, targeting key military defense structures.
These missiles were designed with AI rerouting capabilities, allowing them to change their flight path mid-course to avoid civilian casualties. The missile strikes didn't just destroy structures, they created a firestorm that lit up the night sky. The Stone Brothers' stronghold was being dismantled with the efficiency of a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. Every defensive wall, radar post, and weapons depot was reduced to rubble in a matter of seconds. The precision of the strike was unlike anything seen before in military history. But the battle was just beginning. While the military had begun its surgical strike, what awaited on the ground was the true test. Could the Stone Brothers and their private army mount a defense? As the sound of explosions and drone strikes echoed through the jungle, the ground forces pushed forward, with the U.S. Army Rangers and Marine Corps Raiders on the front lines. 30 Abrams tanks rumbled across the rough terrain, their massive treads crushing everything in their path, as Stryker armored vehicles provided cover for the infantry. They were moving in fast, knowing every second mattered. Elsencio's defenses would not hold for long. From above, the drones continued to scout, sending real-time data back to the command center. Thermal images showed cartel soldiers scrambling to mount a defense, while live biometric data confirmed the location of hostages, many of whom were just moments away from being sold into human trafficking or shipped off to organ farms. Every second counted. In the heart of the operation, Marine Raiders launched from MH-60 Seahawk helicopters, landing with perfect precision in the heart of the cartel's prison compound. The sound of helicopter blades echoed as elite soldiers fast roped down into enemy territory. The Raiders breached the compound with military precision, taking down the defenders who fought back with rockets and machine guns. The raid was brutal but efficient. Within 12 minutes, 2,019 hostages were freed, including 41 Americans, many of whom had been kept in inhumane conditions for weeks awaiting their fate. As the ground forces advanced, the cartel's resistance became more vicious. Rocket-propelled grenades exploded in the air. 50 caliber machine guns fired relentlessly from hidden gun nests, and the sound of landmines detonating filled the jungle air. The cartel fighters were putting up a fierce defense, using camouflage and traps to catch U.S. forces off guard.
The tank battalions led the charge, tearing through the jungle and bunkers, but they faced constant resistance. Booby traps were set in every corner, some explosive, others designed to incapacitate. Snipers camouflaged as farmers shot at American troops, making it impossible to tell who was a combatant and who wasn't. The jungle seemed to fight back as well, its dense foliage becoming a tactical weapon for the cartel. But U.S. forces were prepared. Javelin missile teams took out key enemy armor, and M109 howitzers sent precision artillery strikes into cartel strongholds without harming civilian structures. The artillery fire was relentless, and it quickly became apparent that the cartel's defensive lines were breaking. Then, a final counterattack came from the cartel's elite forces, desperate men trying to regain control of their fortress. They made their move, but the American military was ready. In one final act of precision, the U.S. troops struck back, and the Stone Brothers' forces were decimated. The jungle was silent, save for the sounds of troops moving through the debris. But with the Stone Brothers' forces weakening, there was one lingering question. Did Lucas and Jared Stone survive? And if they did, how would the U.S. military finish them off? By 0600 hours, the Stone Brothers' empire had been obliterated. Elsencio, once considered an untouchable fortress, was now a smoldering ruin. The 2,000 hostages had been freed, and 3073 cartel fighters lay dead. Among the dead were Lucas and Jared Stone, their bodies discovered beneath the rubble of their collapsed command bunker. Forensic teams confirmed their identities using DNA samples and dental records. The mission had been executed with surgical precision. There had been 0 U.S. casualties and no civilian deaths. The Pentagon had outperformed expectations. Their military-grade technology had allowed them to launch an attack that was both brutal and humane.
They had destroyed a global cartel, liberated thousands, and sent a message to every criminal empire across the globe. The US military could strike anywhere, anytime, with flawless precision. This wasn't just a win, it was a military revolution. Elsencio was gone, and with it, the Stone brothers' legacy of terror. The operation had become a blueprint for the future, an example of how advanced military technology, when combined with human precision, could dismantle the most fortified enemies in the world. But the victory was bittersweet. For all the cartel fighters killed and victims freed, there were still more enemies out there. The battle for justice had only just begun. With Elsencio destroyed and the Stone brothers gone, the question lingered. What would be the global consequences of this attack? And would the US military continue this strategy in the war on global terrorism? Elsencio's fall wasn't just a tactical victory, it was a global message. News of the operation spread rapidly across the world. Images of liberated hostages, including American citizens, and the destruction of Elsencio flooded the media. The message to the world was clear: no cartel, no warlord, and no criminal enterprise could hide from the reach of US military precision. The Stone brothers thought they had built an empire that could never be touched. But in just 3 hours, 2,000 US troops had wiped their empire off the map, without losing a single soldier and without harming a single civilian. This was the beginning of a new doctrine in the war on terror, a doctrine that combined military firepower with advanced technology and precise algorithms to deliver justice where it was most needed. Cartels and terrorist organizations worldwide went into panic mode. Their sanctuaries were no longer safe. The US military had made it clear that human traffickers, drug cartels, and criminal empires would no longer be allowed to operate with impunity. This operation wasn't just a victory for the US military, it was a moral win for the victims of trafficking and exploitation, whose names were finally spoken in the light of justice. 2,000 lives were saved, but the ripple effects would be felt for years to come. Elsencio was destroyed, but the war on terror had just begun. The question now wasn't whether the US would continue this campaign, it was how far they would go. Would the Stone brothers' demise serve as a warning to all who threatened humanity? Or would this be just the beginning of a new global war?